I wasn't even sure if I was going to end up talking about this album because it came out like 2 months ago and I didn't even know about it. Earlier this year, I was talking about how Blood Orange might possibly put out an album. It came out in August and I didn't know about it. I was not paying attention. I must have been living under a rock. But anyway, it came out. This is very late, but let me talk about it because honestly, it's one of my favorite albums that has come out this year. I've really enjoyed it. It's very beautiful. So why not talk about it, even if I'm late, even if it came out 2 months ago? Let me just do me. You know what I mean? Let me do me. Okay, so let's get into Blood Orange's newish album, Essex Honey. Can I just say I really love it? You know, not every day overthinking. I just really took to it. It's a theme that I think about a lot, which is grief. I want to get into what I liked about the album, what songs I liked, and why. What I love about Blood Orange and the work that Dev Hynes puts out is that you know it's him. It is so distinct. Throughout the album, the tone of the guitar, horns doing little frills here and there, little phrases here and there. It feels so Dev Hynes, and he has not lost that in the last 7-8 years. I don't know about you guys, but I get very picky about cohesivity. Am I making up words? What I'm trying to say is I love it when albums, and this is really important to me, I love it when albums are like in the same neighborhood. The production is similar. The themes are similar. I really, really appreciate it when things are cohesive in an album. Now, there are exceptions to my rule, but generally that's what I really enjoy. And that's what you get with this album and generally just Blood Orange albums because he produces his own music, right? A lot of albums, you'll have, you know, the whole body of work and multiple artists have produced the album, which for me, my ear doesn't love that so much. So that's just like, this is my biases. So what I really appreciated in this album was that obviously produced by Blood Orange, but also the fact that artists like Caroline Polachek, Mustafa, Eva Tolkien, and Lord are featured on multiple songs in the album. When familiar voices appear throughout the album, it brings this sense of comfort, familiarity, which I think is so necessary for someone going through grief. So the lyrics, still broken, can't think straight, mind loaded, heart still aches. That alone with just Blood Orange's voice, you know, that's giving depths of despair. That's very, very sad. But the fact that there's 3 other voices in there, there's other voices also singing those words, kind of shows that this experience, I can't say shared, but the burden is shared. I think that is perfect. I think that was a really great idea. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know, but I just really love that sense. So I'm just gonna read this quote. That song is maybe the most Frankenstein of them all. My process is already quite Frankenstein. Its initial genesis was maybe 5 years ago in terms of the music. I was constantly working on it, and it was all my voice singing everything. A year later, Kelly Zutrow from the band Wet sang the Elliott Smith line because at that point I was already pretty deep in the idea of interpolating music, and I just kept working on it. I worked on Mind Loaded a lot, and honestly, it could have only been finished with Ella, aka Lord, Caroline, and Mustafa. It's a good example of what happens to me a lot, where I'll get it to a place and I'll feel good with it, but I need to bring in friends. I need to show it to friends who I know think differently, to see what they hear and how they interpret it, because I've hit a ceiling. When I bring them in, it smashes the door open. Another thing that makes this album cohesive is the same lyric being put in different songs. So the album opens with Look at You, and one of the lyrics is, it's hard to look at you. And that lyric also shows up in somewhere in between. Another example of this is, I don't want to be here anymore. It's shown in Thinking Clean and also Westerberg, which is, I think, the 10th track of the album. And I think that really points to the fact that healing and grief And dealing with grief is not a linear process, you know, because he could have started the album being like, I don't want to be here anymore, and then gone towards the end, you know, I do want to be here, I love life, blah, 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 blah. But that's not life, and that is not grief. And that's what makes this album feel so real. Healing is not linear, it's all a journey. Some days you're gonna feel really, really great, and other days you're not going to. And also, there's gonna be times where you think you've sort of overcome some things, and then you're confronted with it months later, years later. That is the beauty of life. That is the reality of life. And Dev Hynes really shows that here. Another thing with the Hard to Look at You, which is a very interesting point, in a interview that Dev Hynes did with Genius, he kind of points to the fact that in Western culture, death, although it is inescapable, sorry to break it to you, it's not often talked about in the Western world, and more often than not, it's just ignored until it happens. And so when people in the Western world, and I think, you know, context is important. He was raised in England, Essex. That Britishness comes into this where they kind of ignore, some very confronting issues until it happens. And so when someone you love is gone, you're not only dealing with the grief, but you're dealing with the fact that now you're confronted with something that you've been ignoring the whole time. I think that's something a lot of people could probably relate to. Tight muscles, late summer, you're happy in wonder. These lyrics are quite literal and they bring you in the room. And that's not something I feel like I really completely felt from Blood Orange songs before. I guess, you know, I could say that's brave, and it is in so many ways. It is brave to be that real with what's going on and expressing that to a wider audience. But I think it also points to the fact that grief really just brings you down to what's real. You have no choice but to be real. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I don't sound all like la-di-da-di-da, but I guess if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Towards the end, track 8, we have a song called The Last of England, which was very... When I realized what was happening in the song, I really had to sit for a second. The first 45 seconds or so is actually an audio recording of The Last Christmas with Dev Hynes' mum. So that automatically sets the tone of this song. You know, it begins with this piano arrangement, then goes into a beat, relates to the theme of memory that comes into this album, that you're reflecting on the last moments. You're reflecting on all the moments, but you think about those last significant times that you had with that person and you hold on to them. And I just thought that was very, again, tender, very tender. Anyway, there is a lot more I could say, but let me just leave it at that. If you haven't heard the album, I really recommend you go listen to it. It's very beautiful. Grief is one of those things that is hard to describe, and he has so perfectly described what grief can feel like. And I really appreciate this album. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah. And you know I'll be back next week. Bye.